Hello, I'm Brad Smith and welcome to Unit 10, Alignment of Supply Chains Using Contracts. This week we look at how an organisation can optimise its inventory level across the entire supply chain. An important aspect of supply chain management is aligning the entire supply chain ultimately to deliver maximum value to all participants. And again, we come back to this concept that the supply chain should be aiming to maximise value for all participants in the supply chain. If any one party in a supply chain becomes too dominant and seeks to maximise the value for itself, then invariably that occurs at the expense of other parties within the supply chain. And often what we find is that the overall value created is less than it could have been. So this week we look at how organisations can start to maximise the overall value through the use of contracts. Contracts is obviously the language that organisations use to speak to each other and to influence each other as they go about placing orders on each other for demand and supply. Now it sounds fairly easy and you would think quite simple to do, to align the supply chain, but invariably it doesn't happen very often. Most supply chains, it's been found, are not coordinated because one party or another does have a dominance and use this to influence or to try and gain some advantage. This week we'll look at some important contractual ways that the organisations can start to try and align their supply and demand. Some collaborative strategies. First of these might be a buyback contract. This is a way to start sharing the risk along the supply chain. So an organisation that is wanting to have more of its product available in the marketplace, perhaps to manufacture at higher volumes to improve their efficiency, get closer to their optimum economic order quantity, will need to ensure that they have some demand for that product. Now they can't just force that demand on their customers, because that is making their customers take on additional risk. So even though it might be the optimum point for them to manufacture, it's not necessarily the optimum for their customers. But one way to overcome that is to use buyback contracts. So the manufacturer will guarantee to buy back any unsold product. This way the risk is more evenly shared. So the purchaser of the product knows that if the demand is not there, even though they've taken more product, they will have the option to send it back. So this is quite common in some industries. Another way that contract can be used to manage the supply chain and the inventory levels throughout the supply chain is the use of revenue sharing contracts. So a manufacturer might say to their distributor that we would like you to take on more product and have it available for sale, and rather than charge you for that product, what we'll agree to do is share the revenue. So ultimately, if we sell more, not only do we make more, but you make more. So try and enter into these win-win contracts where everybody wins. A classic example of this was some years ago in the video rental market, where a lot of video stores were very reluctant to buy more than a couple of copies of a movie because they knew that these movies had a limited lifespan, that after 2 or 3 months very few people would be wanting to come in and rent them. So any extra copies that they took on, they knew that they would have a low chance of getting a return on their investment. What the movie studios said to the video stores was, well, we're happy to sell you the movie at a lower price, and in return what we'll take is a share of any revenues you get from that video. That way you can buy more videos, have more available for the customer, and we'll have more opportunity to sell those, rent those videos, and in return we'll get this revenue stream coming back through a revenue sharing arrangement. It worked out to be a win-win for everybody involved. Not only did the movie studio sell more copies of the video, the video rental outlet was able to sell more copies of the video to the customer, but the customer had the video available more often to them. So everybody won in that scenario, and it became the industry standard. It's all about sharing the risk along the supply chain. However, doing this means that companies have to have in place good information systems. Again, it's important that the end customer demand is shared with those up the chain that have to ultimately meet that demand. So we have a look at some ways that companies can implement information systems to manage the inventory along the supply chain. Key terms that we'll be looking at include things like vendor managed inventory. Sometimes the manufacturer will say, let us take ownership of the inventory throughout the supply chain and keep you, as suppliers, will keep you stocked with the inventory you require. We look at terms like collaborative forecasting and replenishment planning, where organisations implement information systems that allow them to work together to maximise inventory levels through the supply chain, and continuous replenishment programs, where again the manufacturer takes on a lot more ownership of managing and maintaining the inventory levels through the supply chain. These are all aspects that are very important if the supply chain is to become aligned and ultimately optimised and maximise the value for all the participants in the chain. So I hope you enjoy reading through Unit 10. I look forward to helping you, and I'll see you in Unit 11.